Hello everybody and welcome to Let's Talk. In case you guys have not seen Let's Talk before, this is an interview series where I talk to everyone's favorite Let's Players so we can kind of better understand who they are and what they do and how they do their jobs, essentially. So here with me today, we got a streamer on with us. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Hello, I am Tom Fawkes. That's not my real name. I'm 27 years old. I've been doing the YouTube game for about 9 years now, and yeah.
I was now that you mentioned your name and age, we were gonna go into first step. We're gonna do a segment that I am now calling Tom 101. So older subscribers may understand all the references that we go over, but they may still not know everything about the Let's Players or streamers they follow.
Yeah.
And sort of on the other end of that, like more recent subscribers or followers might be lost when it comes to certain in-jokes or historical references, I guess you could say. So this next section should cover a lot of that, and that should sort of cover both bases. So now that you told me a little bit about yourself, so where did the name Tom Fawkes come from?
So when I first started up on YouTube, it was originally Tom Kitsune. You could see on the URL, if you type in youtube.com/Tom Kitsune, it'll link you to my channel. My favorite animal is like the fox, like around at least during that time it was. So like it was like, oh cool. And I was really into like Japanese culture and anime at that time. As I like grew older and sort of like shed that part of my life, I was sort of like, this doesn't really seem very like all inclusive. So I changed it to still kind of have like a little bit of a pun with like Fox in there, while still kind of keeping it as like a username sort of thing. Okay. And now I get jokes all the time that it's like Guy Fawkes. So
I was kind of wondering if that somehow played into
No, it did not at all. It's just a pun on the fact that Kitsune is Japanese for fox, and I still wanted Fox in my nickname, so I changed it from Fox to Fox. It was a whole deal.
Too late to change it now.
Yeah, at this point it's stuck. I'm surprised I was able to get away with changing it when I did, because that was at a time when I was like kind of like on the upturn of like growing.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's why your YouTube is still Kitsune, whereas almost everything else is just Fox.
Yep.
Okay. So next question. I'm sure there are plenty of streamers and Let's Players who could be doing this on top of such as work or school. Are you currently a student or employed?
No. I started this when I was in high school, and kind of like more or less took a sabbatical on it when I was in college. But no, I'm not. I graduated back in 2012.
Good for you.
Yeah. Do
you mind if I ask what your concentration was?
3D animation. As you've seen on my channel, sometimes the source filmmaker stuff. That's like a very. I know we're getting a little bit on a tangent here, but that's like a very like dulled down version of like 3D animation, because you have all the assets available to you. You don't really have to like model any sort of like characters or like environments. You don't have to texture them, you don't have to rig them. It's all there for you. So like if you're kind of going into it as just somebody who like makes the videos and just animates, then I've got nothing but respect for the people who can do all that. Like there was a point where I could as well, but it's kind of been lost to me.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, I think at this point, I was trying to use programs like Blender and Maya, and it's extremely complicated. I got the hang of Blender, but that was about it for me. And I could only really do like still stuff.
I mean, like, if you could ever figure out rigging, like, because like all the assets are already there for you, source filmmakers are a really good way to try to get into it.
Yeah, definitely. Thank God for Gary's mod.
Yeah.
So I guess at this point, would you consider either your channel or streaming your main source of income?
Yeah, they both almost equally actually provide me my main source of income. If I had to choose like a couple of years ago, it would definitely be YouTube. But now like Twitch is, I don't know, in some aspects Twitch has like surpassed YouTube in some areas of like my financial security. I used to be employed part-time at GameStop. That probably went from 2012 to like 2014, 15 or 16. Like, no, it was 15. It was like I quit like almost on the 3-year anniversary of me working at GameStop.
Yeah, the 3-year itch is actually, for some reason I have this thing where I quit a job every 3 years or get laid off, whatever happens first.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, it wasn't even the fact that like I wanted to move on from it. It was the fact that at that point I'd started doing Let's Plays with Chilled Chaos and like the Derp Crew and all that. And at that point, I started getting recognition from TRG because I was doing the Source Filmmaker animations.
Right.
So that really put like a boost in like my subs and my view counts and whatnot. So by the time I was ready to quit GameStop, there was a point where I probably should have quit GameStop, but I was like, I would like to focus more on what I'm doing on like the YouTube stuff. So I took a demotion instead. And then like when I realized that it was like significantly more lucrative doing YouTube and streaming and whatnot, than where I used to be at GameStop. Like before I took the demotion, I was like, all right, I'm ready to leave GameStop now. So ever since that was like about a year and a half ago now, I've been doing YouTube and streaming full time now.
So then how many hours per week do you say you spend working on either LPs or streaming?
I have no social life. I generally if I generally wake up, if it's early enough, I'll run like the treadmill or like work out and then go get some food. And then I'll come back here and then just sit, and then we'll be like, okay, stream goes live in like 3 hours. What can I get done in that time? Or something like that. And it's my every day at this point, every like waking hour, I'm pretty much working on LPs and streaming.
At that, I guess, like sort of changing subjects, but not really. What was it that got you into playing video games?
Oh man, I think I had exposure to video games when I was in the womb. Because I'm not kidding either. Because like, what was it? I heard this story from my parents. Like, when my dad was laid off from one of his older jobs, it was around the time when the NES came out. He would play it with my older brother when before I was born, and then around the time that my mother was pregnant with me, like she'd be at home like with nothing to do, so she would get on the NES from time to time, and I pretty much had an exposure to it, like I said, ever since I was born. Like I had a brother before me, so he was the one who was getting like all the stuff, and I'd get like the aftermath of being able to play it.
So then at that point, what was like the first game you ever owned? Like what was your first game?
My first video game that I ever owned. Oh man. I'd want to say Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest was the first one I ever owned myself.
Ooh, nice.
Because I don't know, I think it got to a point where this is like my brother grew up in like the late 80s, early 90s, and I was born in 1990. So my brother was probably getting around to that point. No, it couldn't have been, because he still would like play them with me and like share them with all of his friends. It was kind of around that point when like video games were like on the cusp of like being from like nerdy to like, I don't know, it was sort of starting to like blend into the mainstream.
Right.
I'm sorry if I sound like a little bit like froggy right now. But anyway,
That's okay.
But it was like I don't know. I don't think he really liked the original Donkey Kong Country that much, and I was the one who kind of like pushed into getting more of that. That was the first one I got, and I think I got it around like Christmas of like 90, 96, 97. I'm trying to think, because like at that point I can kind of like recall living in the first house that I grew up in. So I think it was around 90, maybe it was like 95 actually that I got that game on Christmas. The first game I ever bought myself, I want to say, was Yoshi's Story. Because I remember,
okay.
Yeah, I remember saving up my money for that one, and I remember going to I think it was called like KB Toys back then. It was like some toy store that like doesn't exist anymore.
I can tell you, yeah, that's what it's called.
Going into there, and like back in those days, they had all the video games like behind a counter, as opposed to like being behind like a glass like panel or whatever. And you call the store guy over there, and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, you want this? Oh, I'll give it to you." And I bought Yoshi's Story with all my own money then.
So then what was the first game you ever beat?
Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest. Oh no, you know what? That's not true. I did manage to beat Super Mario Brothers after seeing oh no, wait, that wasn't until much later. Good God. No, I guess it was Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest was the first game I ever beat. Because I remember getting to, I remember like my brother and I would kind of like pass it on and off until we got to the final boss. So yeah, DKC2 was the first one I ever beat. So the first game I ever owned was the first one I ever beat. I guess that, no, maybe, I don't know.
Poetic, maybe?
Yeah, poetic, but I don't really have like that much of a memory from back then, so I could have beaten something else before then, but I just remember Donkey Kong Country 2 the most prominently.
I guess on that note, like what kind of games did you often play as a kid? Like what kind of genre of games?
Mostly platformer at the time. I liked the Super Mario Brothers. I liked the Donkey Kong games. It was mostly like Nintendo related as well. So if it wasn't like Donkey Kong or Mario Kart, then I'd still have like Super Mario Brothers. Then I still have like Mario Kart for the SNES and all that jazz. But yeah, it's mostly platformers.
And then, do you have any like favorite game related memories?
Yes, actually. This kind of goes back to the relating to Donkey Kong Country 2 again. This actually also relates to Let's Playing in a sense. Because my brother got into video editing at like a very young age. Unfortunately, he doesn't do that for a living now anymore. He kind of like fell off the van, or fell off the wagon on that one. Fell off the van. Good God. But we had a VCR that could record the input onto a VHS, and I had like no like obviously there was like no like common microphone setup for that kind of thing. But I recorded me playing Donkey Kong Country 2 onto a VHS because it was around the point of the game where like it was really hard and like a bunch of my friends couldn't get past it. So like I had recorded it on that VHS and was like, oh cool, I can share this with my friends, and now they could figure out sort of like how to get past this like certain part. And like I remember like I had like a marker set, like a Crayola 8-color marker set. No, it had to have been more than that because it included colors like pink and brown, and those weren't like in your bog standard 8-color set. But I had that, and I made like a makeshift cover for it. Like I drew like Donkey Kong or Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong, and like made like a little like cover for it, and like sort of had that as like a sleeve over the VHS. It was just made out of printer paper, like 2 pieces of printer paper taped together that I folded into a sleeve and just shoved the VHS into there. So yeah, that's probably my fondest gaming related memory.
Okay. Do you happen to have any others?
Oh man, I guess the first time I bought Super Smash Brothers, because like usually I didn't see it as a fighting game. It was more along the lines, because it still like sort of went by the platformer standards. Super Smash Brothers, the original one for the N64.
A little bit, yeah.
And like each of the stage, I was like, oh man, this is like a level, but instead of like going through a level, you have to fight. It's like a boss rush kind of thing. So like I quote unquote beat that game the day it came out, and I was like really excited because like, oh my god, I beat it! Oh man! And it was just like, oh wait, this is a fighting game. Like there's much more to it than just beating through the game the first time, going through the gauntlet of characters. Because I never played like any games like Street Fighter at that point, where the single player was your basic. Control the, fight all the different characters through these different stages until you reach a boss character at the end.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I probably have more, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Most of them are related with Super Smash Bros. Because I think I spent more time in that franchise than any other franchise. Like, for example, I got my start on YouTube doing Super Smash Bros. Brawl Machine. I'm probably getting ahead of myself here. I'm looking at the review questions right here, or interview questions right here. So we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Yeah.
So moving on to another question. What game is your absolute favorite so far?
For the longest time, it was Donkey Kong Country 2, but I don't know. It's changed over time. Like I really like Shovel Knight. Like all the updates they put out for them, it makes the game like constantly feel fresh. And like I don't know. Like I'd say like the original Shovel Knight wasn't like my favorite when it initially came out, but after they've kept constantly updating it and giving you all these different sort of like play styles on top of like just everything they've like built upon that, it feels like fresh every time I go back to it with the new updates. Like I just did a Let's Play on Spectre of Torment, and honestly it's probably my favorite one of the bunch so far gameplay wise.
It's the most different from even Plague Knight's campaign, right?
Yeah, like Plague Knight still had some major differences from Shovel Knight as well, but yeah, there are some major differences in Spectre Knight as well. I can't wait to see how the King Knight one comes out, but Shovel Knight's probably one of my all-time favorites. Oh man, but yeah, probably like very close between DKC2 and Shovel Knight.
So the opposite of that, what game do you hate the most? Hate may be a strong word.
Yeah, still. I can't think of anything that I out and out dislike. I guess if like what I had the worst time playing, probably Sonic the Hedgehog for Xbox 360. Because I'm trying to think, because I usually try to avoid stuff that I wouldn't like playing. So like that, I mean, like that was, I mean, I went to that one because it was entertaining, but even that game wasn't really that bad. Like I could tell it was rushed, but it played almost identically to the Sonic Adventure games.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are starting to figure out that maybe those two games weren't as good as they remembered.
I mean, well, I still have fond memories of the Sonic Adventure games. Like, I can still go back and play them and be like, yeah, no, this is definitely a game. Like, this is one where it was a game where, I liked it, glitches and all. Like, I barely ran into any glitches when I played it because what is it? The PC is a port of the GameCube version, Battle, or at least both versions of it. It's DX and Adventure 2 Battle.
Yeah.
And I remember liking those games overall. I never really went for like 100% completion on them, and I figured that would be a lot more aggravating if I did. But like you look at the Game Grumps and like Aaron playing Sonic Adventure DX and him just like losing his shit over it. But it's like to each their own, It's like everyone's gonna have different experiences playing games. It's not like a movie where it's like everything's sort of like laid out in front of you.
Well, I think going back to some older games, having played even some of the more recent titles in their own respective series, I think we're finding a little bit more that we've gotten a little bit used to certain luxuries. And going back to older titles, it seems a little bit more stilted.
Well, on top of that, like the older titles are definitely more rough around the edges. Like Sonic Adventure in general was like the Sonic franchise's like first foray into like full 3D. The first thing before that being like Sonic's 3D Blasters, I think, was isometric perspective.
Yeah.
So, actually, no, I think there was a 3D Sonic game before that, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But either way,
there was a little demo in Sonic Jam for the Saturn.
I guess so. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But no, wasn't Sonic Jam? One of them was like full 3D. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. It could have been. Might have been beta footage I was watching.
Yeah, there was Sonic Extreme, and that's like the holy grail of unreleased Sonic game. Like, I guess trivia.
I guess Sonic R was I guess the first foray into a 3D Sonic game. It wasn't like a traditional one, but it kind of set the bar for what they were going to do in Adventure and Adventure 2 and all that jazz.
Yeah. So kind of still on this question, were there any games that you maybe didn't like when they originally came out, but sort of grew to like or love with time? I always sort of think about Final Fantasy VIII.
I guess I would say like maybe not loved, but like I guess Sonic the Hedgehog for Xbox 360 was one of those games because I hyped up as being this god-awful, horrible, just wretched, glitchy mess of a game. And yeah, there were some parts that were just like that were like incredibly frustrating, like, oh, I gotta like jump through all these different hoops and there's nothing telling me like what the right one is or like what I need to do that to make like the correct decision or whatever.
Right.
And it was like super frustrating like in certain parts of it, but like I guess it was like I didn't like it before I started playing it, but then the second I started playing it was like, this isn't that bad at all. Like it's like Sonic Boom is definitely worse. Well,
you just kind of feel like this weird what's the best way to put this? It's kind of like, oh, it's really not so bad. It's like kind of good in its own bad way.
It's like
for the way it is.
I understand. It's like the Proton John syndrome where he plays like bad games on purpose because it's like, oh man, these old terrible games are really fun because they're old and terrible.
Well, I'm almost wondering if that's just Stockholm syndrome.
He still hasn't gotten used to puns yet, so you can't convince me on that one.
That's true.
But yeah, no, like there were some like very, very awful parts to Sonic 06, but like I don't know, like I think there was only like one rage-inducing moment for me in Sonic 06 when I played through it, and that was more or less it was a mini game where you had to jump through like a bunch of these like wormholes in order to like get through a certain area, and every time you got the wrong one, Sonic would repeat the same line over and over and over again. So that was pretty infuriating. But the more infamous parts, like the silver fight, the it's no use bit, and there's like a ball puzzle in a later on level where you play Silver. That took me a long time, but it wasn't like infuriating.
Okay. Because I would figure at least the boss fight might be infuriating.
Well, I knew it was coming though because I'd seen like Let's Plays of it before.
Yeah. On the flip side, are there any games that you originally really liked or loved, but then kind of stopped? Maybe you don't feel the same way about them anymore?
I can't think of any off the top of my head. Because nowadays, a lot of the like older games that I've played have been through like Virtual Console or like in older collections. So like, I'm sure if I went, how many times can I say like? Anyway, I'm pretty sure if I went back to like, there we go again, to an N64 game that was originally on the N64 that's been ported to a later system. Banjo Kazooie would probably be a good example of that. I probably wouldn't like it as much on the N64 as I do on say the Xbox One, because for one, they updated it so the game runs better, so it's not constantly like lagging behind, like there's not a low frame rate. And second, they changed one of the gameplay aspects of Banjo Kazooie, where normally if you go into a level, you have this thing called a note score. When you collect the notes and then leave, that would be your top score, and then when you go back in, you have to collect all the notes all over again.
Yeah,
they took that out in the
died.
they took that out of the Xbox 360 version.
Okay. That's
so
good,
so I'm pretty
to
sure
know.
if I went back to the N64 version of Banjo Kazooie, I would not like it nearly as much.
Okay. And finally, console war question: What side would you be on?
I mean, I've played such a wide variety of games now. It's not like any particular one it reigns supreme over the rest. If we're counting PC, then like, you know, I guess like the thing with PC is that like it's such a free market that it becomes like diluted with, you know, crap. You know, like there's like you have to really find like the diamonds in the rough.
You really have to go with either word of mouth or reviews or some such.
And then it's like with, you know, Microsoft and Sony pretty much have like the same problem where they're both trying to compete with the PC market by throwing a lot of money around, basically saying, make this for our console and like leave everything else, you know, by the wayside. And like basically trying to make the more or less like the dying, like not really dying, but like try to make old computers viable. You know what I'm saying? Like these were like every system every like console that comes out nowadays is outdated by the time it's released.
Usually.
And Nintendo never tries to fight with hardware. I know it's like they're like stuff, their main like power is in their games, but I feel like they could be doing so much more with better hardware. So there's no one, I mean, like, obviously I'm a huge Nintendo fan, but like there's no one console that I could back in, like, say, a console war, because all of them have, like, you know, problems that equate, you know, like problems that like sort of like even out the playing field.
Yeah, I think Sony, well, especially Sony and Microsoft kind of compete with each other, and Nintendo's sort of on its own area. But with Nintendo, they don't personally feel like there's a need for them to have strong hardware, because as far as they're concerned, their games don't necessarily need it.
Right. They win on exclusives alone. Like they're like because like working at GameStop, I've seen it all the time. People coming in where it's like, can I get a Mario game? And I pull out like a Wii U or like a DS game, and they're like, no, for Xbox. No. And it's parents, so like, you know, I can kind of give them the benefit of the doubt on that one. But it's like, oh, Mario games don't exist for Xbox. I apologize. And it's like,
sorry, I used to work at a GameStop too, so I would always be like, I was told once by a coworker, like, yeah, you're gonna get that question. I'm sitting here going like, are you serious? And they go, yeah, you're gonna get it a lot, and I did.
Man, like the GameStop I worked in wasn't like, I don't know, like it was in like a very rich part of town, so like we did not get a lot of we really didn't get a lot of customers in general, I should say.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm surprised that GameStop is still open, but like, I gotta stop saying like. I don't know.
You're fine. I say a lot.
Yeah.
So
I feel like is better than like, because if I say like a lot, I feel like a Valley Girl.
Nah, you're fine.
But yeah, no, the whole GameStop thing was just like a lot of stuff. Like not a lot of people came in, and when they did, they were usually pretty well informed. I think at the point that I worked at GameStop, it was around the time when parents grew up with video games, and children were better at informing their parents about what games they wanted.
Yeah, I think I was still kind of stuck. Like I was working there from between like 2007, 2010, so I still got a lot of like parents that just kind of walked in and were like, oh, okay, like this isn't my
that'll
thing.
happen from time to time.
Yeah, so you would always have to help them out the most. If there was usually like a customer between the ages of 12 and 18, it's like, yeah, they know. So
they know what they're doing. I mean, like, but, you know, GameStop practice, you have to help out every customer because, you know, sell.
Maybe they'll finally subscribe if you help them figure out what game they want. So.
Oh, you meant to like the power up rewards card? I was thinking like,
no, actually, I left.
I'll help you out more if you subscribe to me on YouTube.
Yeah, no, I wasn't in the game at that point, but yeah, no, I actually left right before the power up rewards card. I have a power up rewards shirt when they first introduced it, but I had ran out by the time that had become a thing. Yeah. We just had like the Edge card, and then you would get like 10% off used crap, and then you would get the Game Informer subscription.
I mean, it's basically the same thing. They just changed what it was called, because it used to be EB Edge was the name of the rewards card.
No, I think that's the reason why GameStop bought EB, or it was either that or for their inventory system. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah. So I think we're gonna call it a night here. On the next episode, we're gonna get more into like your channel's history and talk a lot about the stuff you've done on your channel and you know, from then till today. So we will see you guys next time. Say goodbye.
Bye.
Yeah, I'm really bad at ending these, by the way, so this will probably just like dissolve into
yeah.